Finding your German ancestors. This presentation will help Americans, Canadians, and other people living in the Western Hemisphere to find an ancestor of yours that you think may have lived in Germany or have come from Germany. There have been various studies conducted over the years where surveys have been made to determine the ethnicity of Americans, and in every study that I'm aware of, Germany has been listed or given as the largest place where Americans have come from. If you look at this particular study, it's divided up by the counties in the United States, and the gray areas are the areas where the people who were interviewed at the doorstep said they consider themselves to be of German heritage. Now, if you add to that all the many other Americans like myself who have ancestors from other countries, as well as Germany, we might not give German as our ethnicity, but we also have German roots. And so if you put both kinds of people together, it's a very large amount of the United States population that has German roots. Germany over the history has had different sizes, and the political geography has changed. This map here represents Germany at its largest size, which was up to World War I. Also, I would point out that Austria and neighboring Switzerland are also German-speaking areas, and if your ancestors come from any of these areas, there's a very high likelihood that the records were kept in the German language and that the people living there, at least some of them, spoke German. So how do I know if my ancestors were actually Germans? We will discuss indicators that might suggest that they were German, what steps to take if we find an indicator, and how to get help. We'll look at online tools that are available, and we'll do a case study, and we'll consider other means of getting help. Indicators. One would be simply an oral tradition. If you've heard older people in your family, grandparents and older members of your family say, our ancestors came from Germany, or we came from Germany, that's a pretty good indicator. Another one might be a family Bible. If a family Bible is written in German or printed in German, or if inside the Bible it's written down somewhere that the older members of your family were born in Germany, that's a great indicator. Another one would be if you have in your possession any documents showing them receiving U.S. citizenship or a citizenship. Another one would be marriage certificates where it's indicated the birthplace of one of your ancestors having been in Germany. Another would be going to a cemetery and finding a grave marker that gives a German town as being the place of birth of one of your ancestors. A letter from the old country that you may still have in your possession would be an indication that your ancestors were still communicating with relatives that they had left behind in the old country, in this case Germany. Another would be just simply your last name, first or last. Does it look or sound like it could be German? Here's an example of a letter from the old country. This was written in 1921 following the First World War, and here is someone from the old country trying to establish roots with or connections with their family in the U.S., and they indicate where they came from in Germany. So what steps can we take? Well, we can look at the United States Federal Census records. We can look at birth and marriage certificates to see if it gives us a place of birth inside of Germany. Look at a gravestone. We can look at the Ellis Island records. People coming into the United States after about 1871 were processed at Ellis Island and gave where they were from. Castle Garden records predate the records of Ellis Island. Castle Garden is also a harbor in New York, and the state of New York was keeping records prior to the federal government taking over at Ellis Island. And there were other ports of entry, Philadelphia, New Orleans, and other places where people, Washington, D.C., where people came into the United States from Germany and other countries. And there are the hamburger passenger lists, which were people departing Germany through Hamburg. Online tools. There we can look at the geography of Germany for clues. We can contact various regional genealogical societies for help. We can go to archives in Germany which hold records that may be useful to us. And we can look at databases from Family Search and its partners. An online tool that I like is this one here, Georgen Online Dienst, which has been developed on the basis of people that are listed in the public telephone book. This is also divided up by counties in Germany, and as the colors get darker, it shows you where the highest concentration is of people with any particular given name. If you have a given name that is very common, like Müller, Meyer, or Schmidt, then it's not going to help you very much. But if you have an unusual name, in this case Borcherdien, you can see that the Borcherdiens pretty much come from one area. And in fact, the ones that I know personally do come from the darkest area that's listed here on this map. And that's a clue, if you have nothing else to go on, as to where you could start looking. I have a name in my family tree, Haubenstricker. If you look carefully on this map, you'll see one small yellow dot, and that's exactly where my ancestors came from. It's not a large city, it's a rural area. And if I knew nothing more than that my last name had been Haubenstricker, then it would be enough to use this tool. I would be able to pinpoint in Germany exactly where they had come from. Saves me a lot of time looking in other places. Gazetteers. Gazetteers for doing German research are absolutely essential. What do they contain? They contain the geographical coordinates of every town in Germany. They give you the political jurisdiction, what towns, counties, and provinces they belong to, the size of the population, any local major industry, and it gives you Protestant, Catholic, and Jewish parishes that belong to that particular community. When using gazetteers, the one I recommend, and is used a lot, is Meyer's Gazetteer, and you want to use the one from 1914, because that again was when Germany covered the most area or real estate. So I've given here a site where it can be found on the internet. It's available on the internet to look at, and this will help you by using this tool to figure out which church your ancestors would have attended. It may have been in a distant town. The Meyer's Gazetteer lists not only towns and villages, but settlements and manors and mills and even very small groups of people. I like to use the current German telephone book for help. The current German telephone directory is useful because it not only indicates the current zip code of all of the towns in Germany, but it gives you the names of towns that have been renamed. In case of some of my ancestors, they came from a place called Limbach. But Limbach you won't find today on a map. It has become, since the German municipal reform of 1973, it has become part of the town of Kirkel, and there is the area code for Kirkel. So if I wanted to write to the mayor's office in Kirkel, then I would get the information I need for the town where my ancestors came from. You'll notice there are several Limbachs, but this is the one that my ancestors came from, and today it's known as Kirkel, and I have the zip code for it. This is an online tool called Kartenmeister. It's a cool tool for several reasons. It has many of the same functions as a gazetteer, but also if you know that your ancestors came from a certain town in Germany and today it belongs to Poland or Russia, and it might have a Russian or a Polish name or a Czech name, by typing in the name as you know it from your records, from your ancestor, you can hit the search function, and within a few seconds it will give you the the current equivalent in the Russian or Polish language, and vice versa works as well. So if you're having trouble finding the town on a current map, this tool here will help you to find it. This tool here is also a very good tool. It's good because what it does is sometimes you'll read records and some of the words have been cut off, or there's been an ink blot or a hole or something, and you can't clearly make out the name, but if you can make out part of it with this tool, which works, by the way, for the whole world, not just Germany, it will give you, by computer analysis, the most likely place this town could be based on your partial information of the name of the town. Here's an example of a Casper Wolf who is getting married to Maria Ursula Arndt, and in Alsace, an area that belongs to France but was German speaking, and if you go back far enough in history, it was at one time part of Germany and then later went back to Germany at various times. So the question I'm asking is, Maria Ursula's father, Georg Arndt, I'm reading that record to say that he was from a town called Ottern, Ottern Heim, but is he really? Well, if I go on the website of the provincial website for Alsace-Lorraine and I type it in, I see that it doesn't fit. There's no town that is spelled that way, so I know I've done something wrong. I've probably not read it correctly. So the next thing I tried was to go to Google search and just put in the town. As it turns out, there is a town spelled like that, but it's deep in Austria. I have no historical evidence of people going from that area over to this other place, so I'm very skeptical about that. So, but by using this tool that I showed you just a minute ago, I see that the third possibility is without the R, just Ottenheim, and it's showing a place in Baden-Württemberg. Now that seems much more likely. For one thing, it's right across the Rhine River. And by going to Google Map, I see it is directly across the river. It turns out that this village is only 2 or 3 kilometers away, about 1.5 miles away from the other place. And so now I realize that I've misread it, that it's actually Ottenheim without the R. But using that tool helped me to realize that. The German Computer Genealogy Organization or Club is one of the best in Germany for getting help using the computer. They have this website, it's free, it has many great tools that are useful, and each of those tools at the top there will take you to various databases, and I highly recommend it to anyone that's trying to make headway. For one thing, you can put a general search just by the last name of your family. If it's an unusual one, you may be able to pinpoint where they were from in Germany, or also you can search by the location. This is an example of the search engine for Geneviki. In this case, I've typed in that town that we mentioned a minute ago, Ottenheim, and as it turns out, the first hits I got were for the same family, the Arndts. And I can see that Ernst and Karl were from that small town, and both were missing in action in the First World War. So here's a place where I can get information by clicking directly on them. It would open additional information for me. There are various genealogical societies and archives around Germany. This is the umbrella organization for Germany, and they have a lot of really good stuff that you can use for getting assistance from others or for searching yourself. If all else fails, if you do know where your ancestors came from in Germany, most cities in Germany, even small cities and villages, will have their own website. Here is a website for a small town in Germany, and when I go on these websites, I look to see if there's a historical society, if there's a genealogical society, if there's a Heimatsverein, that means one for ethnic heritage. If nothing else works, you can always write to the mayor or to the Standesamt, which is the civil registration office, and ask them who in the town could help you to find your ancestors if you're pretty sure that they came from that town. Some of my ancestors came from this town. Now, Deeringen doesn't exist anymore as a separate town. It was annexed to Eppelborn in 1974. Nevertheless, it has its own website, and I contacted the people at the website there, and there wasn't any historical society in this town or genealogical society, but there was a webmaster, and so I contacted him. And he let me know that there had been a family registry, as a historical family registry, that had been put together a few years earlier. He gave me the ISBN number. I was able to order the book from the book. I found my ancestor here, Apollonia, I knew that her father was Dionysius Schneider, but I didn't know that her mother had been Margareta, and I didn't know the names of her brothers and sisters. And by using this book, I was able to get back more generations to 1540. Now, another place that is full of information for people doing family research are the archives. Each province has an archive, most cities have an archive, and there can be many, many other archives. There are hundreds of archives in Germany, but a couple that are very good. One is the one for Baden-Württemberg, where a lot of Americans have ancestry from. Another one that I particularly like is the one in Thuringia, but all of them, of the provinces of Germany, have archives. And they have websites. Here we're looking at some online records from a provincial archive in, again, Alsace-Lorraine, which is now part of France. And this is from the town of Lauterburg. And this is a record here. It's a civil record. It's kept, of course, in French. And here we're seeing that the records during this period of time, during the French Revolution and the years that followed, the records were kept with the revolutionary calendar. And it's quite different than the calendar that we use. So how do I have an idea that this person being born on the 23rd of Germinal in the year 8 of the Republic, what that would be as we keep track of time? This Jacob. And by using a website that I like, Napoleon.org, I can type in the name of in the Republican calendar, and it will give me automatically what it is in the Gregorian calendar, which is the 13th of April, 1800. And the other way works as well. You can do it backwards. This is a website that's an academic group. These are people down in the Passau area where Austria, the Czech Republic, and Germany come together. They have some fantastic church records that are online free of cost, wonderful tools that you can use. And if you happen to have ancestors from that area, I highly recommend this site. All right, let's do a little bit of a case study. How would we find the birth or the christening entry for Joseph Blaschke, who was born in 1878 in former Silesia? You can see with the arrow I've put on the right that they come from Gleiwitz, right over there in the corner. Well, one thing we can do is we can go to Family Search, and we can use the Family Search catalog, and we can type in the name Schönwald. We know that our ancestors came from Schönwald. Now, in this case, it's showing Schönwald being in the province of Silesia. And we see that there are indeed church records in Family Search. And we see they're available there for the Catholic Church during this time frame near Gleiwitz. And we see here that this town Gleiwitz today has been renamed. If you look below where it's been highlighted, it's now known in Polish as Bojko. But we also see above in the red lettering that if we click, we can get to those records. And there's a browsing function in Family Search, and we can select the town we're interested in this case Bojko, where it's highlighted. On Bojko, and it will take us to the records. And here we are in 1878, and we see that on the 2nd of October, Joseph Blaschke was the son of Paul Blaschke, and his mother's maiden name was Leopoldina Hermann. So now we know the parents of Joseph Blaschke, and we know the exact date of birth. It was the 2nd of October. And we can go further. We also know who the witnesses were to this christening. The German National Library is an excellent resource. I've given you here the website. They have an English page, and all the books that are printed in Germany, or magazines or periodicals after about 1992, by law are deposited in the German National Library. That means that if the book is out of print that you need or want, or magazine, they at least will have a copy of it, and you could go there or contact them and have a copy made. I've done this and it works very well. Here's a case study. According to the United States Federal Census, Mary Emmeline Howard was born on the 10th of February in 1812 in Sundhausen, Germany. Using Google Map, I find a place called Sundhausen over by Erfurt in the middle of Germany, more to the east. I have doubts about that though, because I don't really think my ancestors would have come from there. Historically, it's not likely. But now, by using the gazetteer that we talked about earlier, using Myers, I see that there were 4 towns actually in 1914 by the name of Sundhausen or Sundhausen. And I determined that mine actually come from the area that was Alsace-Lorraine, and I see that these records are available for looking at. And by going online, I find the civil record. There's a link from Family Search to the archive. Here she is being born in the French civil records on the 10th of February 1812, and we see that her father was Matthias Howard and her mother was Katharina Rapp, and we even get the ages of the parents. And this helped me to find out which Sundhausen in Germany my ancestors came from. Actually, in this case, it now belongs to France, and even did at that time. Other help. You can go to Facebook. There are many, many Facebook groups that support German research. Sometimes reading old records in German can be a challenge because the handwriting in those times was different. There are books that will teach you how to use old and read and decipher old German handwriting. You can go to YouTube where there's some tutorials that show you how to read old German handwriting, and there on Family Search there are some tutorials. Or you can seek out personal help. One website, Facebook website that I highly recommend is called Central European Genealogy Research, and you have to be invited in, but if you are allowed in, you get some excellent help here. Below I've given you the address. If you have a document in your possession that you can't read, you can paste it in and post it here, and very often the next day you'll get up out of bed and someone will have already read it and deciphered it for you. My experience with this group has been very, very favorable. Here's a book I'm going to recommend, mainly because it's in English. There's a lot of books in German on how to read old German handwriting, but here's one in English by Roger P. Meinert, who's a professor at Brigham Young University. And this is a book that I highly recommend, and it can help you in reading old German handwriting, teaching you what you need to know when you're looking at the records that you'll be looking at. Again, when I talked about tutorials on Family Search, here's where you would access them. They're video clips. They're short but concise, but very, very good.